Hey, we are live. What's up?
What's going on, people? What's going on? It's Dr. Bo and Corona back in the house. And for the first time, for those of us joining us for the first time, welcome. For those who have been following us on our journey, we appreciate you very, very much for being with us. My name's Corona, and I'm coming to you from New York City. And my boy, the great Dr. Bo Babenko, is in Superior, Colorado. Between the two of us, we have over 51 years of experience in the health and fitness space. So we wanted to peel away the curtain to give you, the listener, a little behind the scenes look at what the conversations we are having. So with that being said, what up, Bo?
What up? Hopefully that wasn't too long to get us copyrighted. Messed up my hair though with the head bobbing there.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. We've been waiting for this one for a while. And every time Corona and I speak, the topic of CrossFit gets brought up, and things start happening. So here we go. Let's see what happens. Fireworks are about.
Things don't happen. Things don't happen, Bo. The topic is for the day. Corona thinks CrossFit sucks.
And it's right there on the screen.
So yeah, that's right not totally true, but it is.
But it is.
But it is. Well, Bo, I'll let you start this off. This is your wheelhouse. This is what you would love doing. Let's go, my friend. Let's dance.
Oh, and I'm wearing the shirt that everyone in CrossFit used to be the shirt you would get for a period of time if you took the level 1 certification in CrossFit. And we now joke, a lot of people joke, this is the best $1,000 shirt you'll find.
Yeah,
because it's $1,000 for that weekend in-person certification. So we're going to get into the methodology, implementation, all these other chapters of this story. We got to try to unwind it. I'm going to talk about my introduction to it and history with it and feelings about it. So CrossFit can be a very controversial term. I think it's often poorly understood. I think it's often poorly implemented, which we're going to touch on. So I'm going to tell my story. I got my doctorate in physical therapy 2008, working in a busy Manhattan clinic 2010. A guy comes in who I'm still friends with. What up, Martin? And very successful guy, young guy, speaks many languages, all this good stuff, and comes in like, hey, when can I start deadlifting 400 pounds? Meanwhile, he's on crutches, coming out of a hip surgery. I'm like, what are you talking about, brah? And he's like, I do this thing called CrossFit. I think you'd like it. And it's a little like Fight Club right now. This is 2010, so there's a lot different than what you see now. At the time, I was very close to where Corona is on the Upper East Side of Manhattan on 61st and Lex, where I was living. And so the closest CrossFit there at the time was called CrossFit Gotham, located on 50th and Lexington, in the basement of a church, and only had classes at 5, 6, 7 a.m. And again, very Fight Club-esque. You had to kind of know the secret knock to get in, and you're paying money to this guy in a weird way. It was very like, it was very weird. And yeah, if you were there for the 5 a.m., which I kind of had to be most of the time because I had a normal job, at whatever, 8 a.m. or 7:30. So I'd have to go to the 5 a.m. and we would, it was in a basketball court. And we would have to pull the equipment out of the garage or out of the closet and set it all up, whatever the workout was that day. So anyway, I got into it. Obviously, that specific guy, Martin, wanted to kind of bankroll a gym. He loved this concept. He saw the growth of it back then. He was a supporter of the whole concept, basically. And so he wanted to get me to open the gym as a physical therapist, which was missing at the time. We could see that like, hey, there's this really cool thing. But if we have this extra academic and like protection model of physical therapy around it, like people are going to last a lot longer in this thing. So we saw that then. And yeah, long story short, sort of, I got into it. I competed in it. I ended up jumping into a few different things that got me to Dubai. And I opened a CrossFit gym in Dubai where I was from 2015 to 2017. I did meet my lovely wife there. That was about the only good thing that came out of that. No, I don't want to say it that badly, but yeah, didn't love the whole experience, but I'm still involved with CrossFit. to some extent here in Colorado. A few of the CrossFits locally that I'm hoping to, again, elevate, and kind of within the context of the conversation we're having today. I was there's less than 1% of all of the trainers who get this shirt, this $1,000 level 1 shirt, less than 1%, which there's a lot of folks who have gone through this certification. Less than 1% have gone on to get the level 3 certification, which is something I did back before I went to Dubai in around 2014, I think. So at the time, there was only I think there was less than 100 folks who went and got that certification. And again, we're going to talk about some of these concepts. So I'm gonna cut it back to the fact that when I was in New York before I went to Dubai, and I talked to this guy Corona. We knew each other through this football league, and he talked a lot of shit, a little trolling, if you will, about this whole CrossFit concept. And I said,
true.
well, why don't you come by and do a class with us? And so where closer to where he was in CrossFit Upper East Side, I believe the name of the gym is CrossFit Metropolis, which again, you had to go through like a weird mechanic space.
You had to go through a mechanic, actually a guy who repaired cars, and it was upstairs from that. I'll never forget that.
Mm-hmm. They eventually had to leave that space because of noise complaints with neighbors, and again, very common thing in New York City. So anyway, he came by. Instead of taking the class, he thought he would just stand there in the corner and be a creep and observe. And there was probably 20 folks in that class, approximately. And I remember there were American kettlebell swings, so you do the swing all the way overhead. And I still very much remember, talking to him after he observed, and I was sweating from my workout. And he said, you know what, like, there was basically 19 people in that class who did not have very good technique on the kettlebell
100%.
swing. He's like, you were the exception, my friend. And that's kind of the problem with that he sees with CrossFit. And I'm not going to say there's 100% of awesome technique, perfect technique everywhere, but we're going to dive into that. I'll throw it back to you and ask.
Let's give a little background. Listen, I'm an ex-athlete from college. I'm an ex-lacrosse player. I've done all these lifts. I'm not against the lifts themselves. Let's just be very, very clear about this. Those lifts are very, very functional, great lifts to have for power and strength. The issue I have with it is the implementation, which we will get to at some point in time, and also the people who are teaching it. These are complex lifts, and then you see a lot of people in the age of 40, 40 and up, and that are desk people who aren't being assessed to go in there. So my main complaint about CrossFit isn't really that CrossFit sucks, but the way it's implemented on a daily basis that I have seen in more than one place, it's not really well implemented, and the people teaching it aren't doing assessments, which is something we will get into it at a point in time within this podcast. But let's just be clear about this for all the people who want to troll and all that stuff. Look, I'm not trolling CrossFit. I'm just talking about how CrossFit is implemented and how they go about it. This is not a bash CrossFit type of deal. Even though
it's so much more fun that way.
It is more fun that way, but I want to make sure, because I want people to get something out of it. I'm not a fan of CrossFit itself. Am I a fan of those lifts? That's a different conversation. But I'm a fan of the lifts and what they can produce. Back at you, brother.
So let's put ourselves in a little glass box. Forget everything else we just said. If I came to you and sat face to face, one-on-one in this little square box that we're in, I'm in a glass case of emotion. No. Anchorman. Yeah. All right. So it's you and I in this box. And I say to you, hey, I have this great idea for a group fitness class. And the basic way we're going to structure the programming is to focus on the 3 different ways that the body can work. Is 1, cardio. We're going to do some cardio stuff, running, rowing, burpees, whatever. Number 2, we're going to have an element of lifting things, lifting kettlebells, lifting barbells, lifting things that way. And then the third part is gymnastics, or you're controlling your own body in space. So that's doing front levers, rings, all these different things. So if I said to you, that is a fundamental way I want to structure a group fitness kind of class, and I'm going to have one person in front of 20 people, and we're going to build on these 3 things, and we're going to mix them up, and like, what is that something on the face of it? Again, we're not looking at what CrossFit is. We're in this box of emotions, glass case of emotions. What do you say to that basic concept?
I think the concept as a widget or something that that's out there, I think it's a good concept. I'm going to go back to what we've been talking about for 5 episodes. I'm going to go back to individualization of each individual person. We're not the same. So it depends on, I will go back to what I said off of inception. It goes back to the instructor and it goes back to the movements that we're making. So do those movements fit what your narrative is and what your body needs? That's where I'm at. Go ahead, back to you, sir.
You kind of left our glass box. I don't appreciate that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll slip back in. My fault. But I'll stay within the glass box. The 3 movements is fine. I just want the individualization. You know about this with me. So this is like a big thing with me. This is like my big hang up.
Right. So the other part of the definition of CrossFit is it's a general physical preparedness program. So that's why it became very popular with military, law enforcement, firefighters, things like that. So again, as a definition, right? And this is where I would say I saw it for what it could be, not necessarily what it was in your face. I saw it for how I could, structure it for myself. One other aspect I didn't say is I competed in the sport and I wanted to really pursue that. And I did get to go to 3 regional competitions, which then would lead to the CrossFit Games, which is kind of the Olympics of CrossFit, or the World Championships, or however you want to think of it. So there's a sports side, and then there's this general physical preparedness side. So coming back to it, and then how does that all correlate back to this group fitness thing, right? So we're in our glass bubble, and so the definition here, again, if you look at let's say again, how do we define fitness? So I'm going to throw that at you. Is how do you define?
It's the same thing you just brought up. I think it's the same thing with those 3 basic movements. That's what we're going to want in every fitness program, anyways. You want to be able to push, you want to be able to pull, you want to be able to squat, you want to be able to hinge.
Well,
and those are all things that CrossFit is actually giving you.
Right.
100%.
But that's the question is now, how do you, with your clients, let's say, as a personal trainer, how do you put that picture together? And if somebody says, let's say again, who do we have recently? Tiffany, the RD that you interviewed. Let's say she comes to you tomorrow and says, "Hey, it's January, whatever, 2021. I'm going to give you a year to make me fitter." Okay, how or help me understand your way of making her fitter within within a context of a definition, if you can.
Well, I'm going to listen. It's very, very simple. This is all very simple. So you're going to come and see me. You're going to give me X number of time. I'm going to make an assessment from where you're starting at. I'm going to find out what your deficiencies are. I'm going to find out what injuries you've had in your past. And we're going to find out what you do daily. All those things are vitally important to making the program come forward. When it's all really said and done, that program will grow as you grow. And as your body changes, I will have to make changes within my structure of what I'm dealing with you for you to actually go to the next level as you keep moving on and on and on and on. Now, with that being said, there's I'll go back to what I said to you in the beginning. There's an individualization about this whole thing that we're dealing with. And I'm looking at people as what they do for a living. You know as well as I do that I know a lot of people that are 40 years of age who've gotten into CrossFit, who sit at a desk all day, who are rounded, internally rotated, and can't actually bring their arm above their head appropriately. I know I'm getting out of your box. And I know you're getting frustrated with me.
Answer the question. You're going way too. We're going to get political. We're going to get Fox News or whatever the hell on this.
Okay.
She comes to you tomorrow and you do your assessment. How are we looking, if you're going to do an Instagram post or whatever, how are you going to show that she's gotten fitter over the course of a year?
Oh, I can do that. You can do that by what are we going to do? Are we doing body comps?
I don't care. I'm asking you. How do you do that? And how does that definition look? Because this is the whole point is CrossFit has a definition of fitness. And this is where I will defend CrossFit. And this is where, again, we're talking about it from a methodological standpoint of how it should be.
Well, you got to get stronger. You have to get stronger in that program. Eventually, you have to get stronger.
But how do you measure strength? How do you measure strength?
So that could be what you're picking up. You got to be stronger cardiovascularly. You got to be able to recover better. Those are all different forms of us getting into shape. Everything that CrossFit offers from the methodology that they're offering is 100% dead on. 100% dead on. That
I would even challenge you there. It's not 100%. Nothing's 100%. I would say there's flaws in that methodology.
90% in the concept of what they're trying to do. The one thing I do love about CrossFit is that CrossFit isn't linear in the sense of what they're actually trying to do. They're trying to make you become an athlete, which is they believe everybody's an athlete, which I think is vitally, vitally important when you go into working out. Yeah, I know you got the V. You look great. You're
No, no,
unbelievable.
no. I'm talking about what the shirt says. That's the
Constant, very high
definition.
intentional functional movement. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, and the other definition is work capacity over broad time and modal domain. So my point to you
Yeah.
about like Tiffany is if she comes in tomorrow, and again, a lot of CrossFits will do some assessment, and this is the way again they kind of skirt or they talk about doing their own assessment. Is there's something called like I forgot if it's baseline, I think is what we called it. So you would do 500-meter row, 40 air squats, 30 sit-ups, 20 push-ups, and 10 burpees or pull-ups, depending on. That's what I've seen. That's like a classic, whatever. So however long it takes you to do that work, right? It's an assessment. It's kind of covering a bunch of different things, right? 5 different modalities. So if it takes her 10 minutes to do that tomorrow, the point of, again, CrossFit and whatever your program is, and now we can get into like whose program is better. Is an individualized program going to get her more results? This is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. So a year from now, if it took her 10 minutes tomorrow and she has 12 months to train, let's say for that event, almost like a sport or Olympics, right? And then she's able to do it in 5 minutes with CrossFit.
She's in better shape. Yeah.
Right. And again, by definition, right, theoretically, she might be in better shape. There's a lot of other ways we can look at that and caveats. But if she does it in 5 minutes with CrossFit and she does it in 5:30, 5 minutes and 30 seconds with the Corona program, is CrossFit a better program than the Corona program? Or do we need to look at this with 100 other data points? Probably.
Yes. Yeah, well, you're dead. And listen, Bo, you're dead on. You're dead on with what you're saying. It's such an interesting. Go ahead. I'm gonna let you go ahead because I'm gonna go off into some never.
Right. That's okay. That's okay. So I appreciate that we both have that awearness of our tangents. So we have our intro, right? We have how I kind of found it. We have how Corona kind of sees it. We talked about the methodology, how we can define it some different ways. Let's talk about the implementation. That's the next chapter of this whole thing is, and this is where the rubber meets the road a little bit, because it's not just about, is the program great? Is it not? I would say, the analogy or the way I think of CrossFit is it is a sport. Like you're saying, CrossFit treats everyone kind of like an athlete. So as people are getting more involved in this sport and maybe they're not getting the perfect coaching and the perfect scaling, which again is something that is very much pushed, but not always implemented properly in terms of if the workout is, there's a famous workout in CrossFit called Murph, which is usually performed every Memorial Day as a tribute. If anyone's seen the movie, what was the movie? The Lone Survivor with Mark Wahlberg. It's about the guy who sacrificed, spoiler alert for the movie. He was the one who sacrificed and made sure to radio in and get the reception so that his guys can get saved. And so that workout, and this is another part of CrossFit that we could talk about, the community, the all the other fun aspects of that. But bottom line is that workout to honor Murph, Lieutenant Michael Murphy, is run 1 mile, do 100 pull-ups, do 200 push-ups, do 300 air squats, and then run another mile. So for most people, that's a lot. For even if you're a pretty good athlete, it's a pretty good workout. It's done once a year. It's also supposed to be done with a 20-pound weight vest. This is something that Lieutenant Michael Murphy would do, I believe, once a week kind of thing, just to keep him moving and feel like he's preparing for this high level military demands that again, when we talk about personalization, not everyone is going to be needing to have that high of a level of capacity in that. But when we come back to it, that's a decent workout to push your overall fitness, right? We could certainly say, and it can also be considered a good measure of your fitness in a very unique kind of time domain, and just a high volume of work. So if you do well on that, and again, you can look at how well you do on that every few years or every year as it's performed every Memorial Day. If you're getting better on that, that's another way to. Some people do their turkey trot and maybe they look at that. Some people do marathons and look at that. Now we have, these popular things, Peloton, F45s, whatever. The deficiencies there to some extent are that they don't so with Peloton, obviously is, now there's Peloton tread and now there's some body weight stuff and different versions where again, I'll give them a little credit. They're trying to mix things up a little and realize that they, part of that's probably more capitalism than just being like, oh, these guys aren't as healthy as they should be. Whereas we look at it and say, hey, like if you're just doing high intensity cycling, you're missing out on a lot of other elements of your fitness and your health and your long-term health and your joint health. So anyway, the implementation, I'll let you kind of go into how do we feel about CrossFit compared to F45s, Barry's Boot Camp, Pelotons, all these other things. I'll let you kind of, throw it back to you.
Well, I don't like any of them, and you know it. I don't like that. Let's just be honest about it. I don't like any group class where the people aren't instructed appropriately, and usually 9 times out of 10 the instructors aren't going to every single person to help them. I think the attempt is made at CrossFit. I think they do make the attempt. I just think some of the people aren't qualified to make these movements themselves. And if you can't assess, I can't remember back when, but I've gone to some CrossFit places where I've never seen the assessment even fly. The F45s and all those other classes, I have it's the same complaint, Bo. It's the same complaint. We are trying to keep people safe. You start making movement in a compensated positioning, we'll say, or a compensated movement pattern, you're going to create a problem. The mother of all injuries is compensation. So my issue is that some people aren't ready to do.
I would say the mother of all injuries is poor load management.
Poor load management, but we can look at poor load management, and that's also another issue going on. You got people competing that don't know how to do the movement. They're just trying to snatch up and do a lot of stuff during the CrossFit class. We're not talking about, but let's be clear. I want to say this. We're not talking about Dr. Bo. I've seen Dr. Bo do it. He does it very, very well. I have another friend of mine named Eric Salvador, who's another great CrossFit guy. They do that well. I'm not against them doing this. What I am against is that the people coming out that are 40 years of age, been sitting at a desk all damn life. The shoulder doesn't move appropriately, and they're trying to do snatches, and they're not being taught, and they're getting injured. Now, Dr. Bo, you are a physical therapist, so let me throw this into your lap. The average injury rate in CrossFit has it made your business better? In terms of the amount of injuries that people get within CrossFit.
Yeah, so I would throw it back to you to say, what's the average injury rate of all sport participation and all class participation? And so, again, the statistic that I'll throw back at you is it's about 20%. This is documented. There's different studies. Again, there's a lot of fluff. We have an episode coming up about research and the problems with research.
Yes,
but yeah, I mean, look, for sure. I think any running, by the way, I'm just going to throw this out there. Running, which is
100%.
Running has the highest injury rate in the world
100%
of almost any activity. And that has to do, to me, with the load management more than anything else. And there's poor technique that gets often overlooked because people think of running, oh, I just need to get out there. It doesn't matter if my hips are doing things and my foot's doing things. Anyway, I don't know. The question being, I don't know if I want to answer your question, but I'm gonna say, like, what's the relevance of that question?
Let me back up.
CrossFit has injuries. So does Peloton. So does SoulCycle. So does everything else.
Let me back up, because this is something we did in the pre-show meetings where I've been very ambiguous, people. So I apologize to you, because Dr. Bo is trying to pin me down to where I want to do. What I'm really getting at is that what I have seen from my experiences, I cannot talk about all CrossFitters, but places that I have seen, I've seen some very, very, very poor movement patterns. People taught poorly and been getting injured. I've gotten a lot of people in my practice from CrossFit because of injuries. So, is that due to CrossFit? Is that due to the client? It's probably a combination of both.
Right.
It's probably the movement patterns within CrossFit. And by the way, I think CrossFit itself is a brand.
Yes.
So that's something that people don't understand. I didn't know that fully, but CrossFit's a brand. It's not what
it's an affiliate model. It's not a franchise.
Correct.
All you're doing when you use the name CrossFit is you're paying the headquarters, whatever it is. It used to be $3,000 a year to use the name. Yeah, and that's it. And again, theoretically, you're applying some of those principles, but at the same time, you can have many other people not using the name doing the same thing, worse, better, however you want to look at it. There's a lot of offshoots from this methodology. There's a lot of offshoots from the whole thing that we can think about and talk about. And again, the growth of Orange Theories and F45s probably came from the popularity of CrossFit, people trying it, saying, oh, like, I don't want to lift weights, I don't want to get bulky, and or I don't want to take the time to learn complex barbell movements, so I'm going to do F45, which is a high intensity interval training type program, which is based on, again, a lot of the principles that got CrossFit its growth. So it's very interesting from a sociological, historical perspective.
Well, all those group classes we're talking about, CrossFit's probably been the best at it, hands down.
That's a victory right here. Victory.
They've been the best at it, but it's a community vibe. It's actually a very, very community vibe. We both played sports in life. So, you know, if you got your name put on the board, biggest guy who lift benches the most or whatever, that was always something driving force when we were younger. I'm assuming that you had it. I had it when I was playing. Mm-hmm. You kind of have that. That community is such a strong community, and they believe in what they do so much that they're kind of rigid in their process. I think you've opened up some. I've even kind of moved off of my I hate CrossFit so much, because the more and more you kind of actually see it and someone's doing it appropriately, you can see the tremendous benefits that you can get from it. Mm-hmm. So it's not just, oh, I hate this. Listen, I hate bar. I don't like bar. I don't like Orange Theory. And for the same reasons. And it's a community. Those sources of fitness are all community based. And all those community based things push each other, push people, and bring people together, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, the one big thing I'll add into that whole part that I think was missing in this conversation is CrossFit should, and again, I don't see it all the time, and I see it actually even in the gym I'm at currently, and I kind of try to call people out on this, is full range of motion.
Yes,
to me,
yes.
Joint health is very simply about being able to go into a full dip and, go and express your body's ability to go into a full range of motion. This comes back to individualization and assessment and all these aspects where I 100% agree with you on that. And it does not always get implemented, unfortunately, but the full range of motion emphasis, even hand release push-ups, right? People talk about push-ups on the internet, and I'm not going to pick on the Army, but in the Army, 90-degree push-ups are what kind of standard is, versus, I think you should do a hand release push-up where your chest is on the ground, you release your hands off the ground, and then you push all the way back up, full range of motion. Same thing with a pull-up, fully hanging at the bottom, chin over the bar and or chest to bar. As much of an expression of your joints as possible. That is what is going to help us avoid arthritis, by being strong and controlled through a full range of motion. So
those are the myths. Those are the myths we've been learning. I mean, we've learned all these myths. We've heard them all. More tension on the muscle, keep the muscle under lock. All these things that we've heard throughout the years that we are now learning as we're getting older. Joint health and full health has to deal with full range of motion also. It's not just, oh, I can throw up this amount of weight, I aesthetically look. I know a lot of people that aesthetically look phenomenal who have no joint health and who are broken down by the age of 50. So, yeah. I mean,
to that point,
that's vitally important.
To that point, I'll give, so Greg Glassman, whose name we haven't brought up, he's the founder of CrossFit. Given that credit, he no longer is actually with the organization that is CrossFit because of some insensitive tweets that he threw out there, and that got him kind of kicked out of the whole organization that he founded. He was able to sell it for a pretty penny. I don't think anyone feels too bad for him, but one of the quotes that I really, and again, you can go back and see all the videos of him talking, and from a scientific standpoint, aside from the cultural insensitivity, if we can put the two aside, the one of the best points that you just kind of led me to is that I will attribute to him is, if you chase aesthetics, you rarely can hold on to it. And it takes Correct. A lot of work. If you chase fitness, and by that definition of fitness that we're talking about of work capacity, broad time, modal domains, if you chase fitness, often the aesthetics will come. Right.
Yeah.
And then again, within the community piece, and this is where, again, it becomes a huge part of this whole thing, where I'm going to say CrossFit has done innumerable progress for the fitness industry to push nutrition, sleep, recovery, breathing, like stretching, mobility, all these things that have emerged from this growth of this, whatever you want to call it, movement or brand. And so, again, I think there's a lot to be said that is positive, that is, and I think we said this on one of our pre-calls, is I think and I don't think you'd disagree with me, is CrossFit as a concept has done more to push and evolve the fitness industry more than any other thing that I can think of, going back to maybe what's his name? Shoot, he's Jack LaLanne. Sorry, Jack LaLanne would probably be the last person who, and maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger. But with his Bible of encyclopedia of training and his Pumping Iron movie. So I think those two kind of things historically would be some of the biggest pushes. The Atlas machines that push kind of the movement of what we know in most modern gyms, Planet Fitnesses and things like that. And then I think CrossFit, again, should get a lot of credit for moving that industry, again, somewhat negatively, maybe group fitness classes. We can certainly, again, yeah.
So let me ask you a question, because I have issue with poor movement structure,
Sure.
period. But here's a question for you. I never asked you in one of our pre-meetings. Do you think that the assessment piece to get into CrossFit, that people would show up and they would be so far behind the ball in the sense that they would have to do like remedial work, that would take away from the popularity of CrossFit in terms of that's why people get accelerated forward in these things? Or do you think that doesn't have any real motivating factor or any factor whatsoever in people joining CrossFit or not joining CrossFit? Because if you had to go through the beginning process of, let's say, 5 months of actually doing movement appropriately just with a bar or with a wooden dowel, would that hurt the growth of CrossFit in the sense of what it is today? Because I haven't seen, and I haven't been involved enough with it, I haven't seen those evaluations that we're talking about. But I've seen guys that I know that I've gotten for rehab that had no business being in CrossFit because they were fully internally rotated, upper cross syndrome, decreased lower dose, all those fun things. And
Right.
they were in a CrossFit doing snatches and all these other things, and their shoulder hurts. Do you think that assessment piece takes away from CrossFit? Would it take away from what CrossFit is?
Yes. I think that, so my analogy here that I'm going to go to real quick is the education system, school system, public school system is there should be minimum requirements for a student. Let's go to high school.
Okay.
For a high school student to be able to enter ninth grade, and you should have certain marks that you can pass, right? In every aspect. You might still have things you need to work on. But does that mean you should not go to high school if you are really bad at math and you just struggle with math or whatever the thing is?
Sure.
If you are a troubled student and you're failing across the board, and maybe you do need to go back to junior high school, and finish out that. And there are these levels of concepts that you should be able to pass. We just shared a video between ourselves earlier today of a girl trying out CrossFit, and she thought she'd be able to jump in and just do class. And again, like that, where she went to enjoy and build and try CrossFit as a famous YouTuber. They said, hey, there's 9 foundational movements that we have. That's what the traditional assessment is for a personal trainer. And this is the thing with CrossFit where it also gets a lot of, it's an interesting divergence. And I'd love to hear your take, not to ignore this question, but the level 1 thing that the shirt kind of got me right is $1,000. Anyone can do it. There's no prerequisite. As soon as you finish, there's a test again. And as soon as you pass that test, you can open a CrossFit gym and start training people and training that methodology. You can have zero experience with anything else. There's absolutely no requirements. That's where the theoretical agreement within the CrossFit space is you probably have a little bit more experience. You should do more things. However, I don't know if you know of any other personal training certifications coming from the personal training world that require an in-person weekend. Well, then that's 16 hours of whatever. That level 1 also requires that you participate in the movements, because there's workouts that happen and there's movements that happen, and you have to kind of show that you can be somewhat proficient in that. And then there is a test at the end of that you have to pass. I believe it was a 50-question test based on the teachings to make sure you were paying attention over those 16 hours. So I think there's something interesting there where, again, like we said, I think CrossFit has a certain bar that it has within the fitness space, despite the fact that it gets pooped on, trolled on, for not having enough whatever. And again, that's a whole different
let me
conversation.
stop you there. Let me stop you there. Well, if we're going to bring it to the personal training space, this is real simple. It's very, very simple. There's a lot of dudes out there that got certifications that have no business training.
From personal training
From
and
personal training. I don't care
and
what
also
certification.
probably in CrossFit, yeah.
You know as well as I do. I know people that got 10 certifications couldn't train themselves out of a wet. That's right, wet, Bo. Paper bag. There's more to it than just being book smart. There's
Yes.
more to this than just being book smart. You have to understand how your body can you hinge. How can, there's certain things that go into this that I think are so overlooked. And I could talk about how angry I am at the personal training space for them not doing their jobs also. And some guys that are partial CrossFitters that do CrossFit and they do personal training and they kind of got their own little thing. You know what I mean? I think whenever we get into assessment and we ever start talking about stuff, we're not talking about sexy. We're not talking about what's really exciting. Why I just did the WOD for the day. I killed it. I did 28 rounds, whatever it is. You go through that, and that's that environment. You got people cheering you on. I think that's a wonderful aspect of CrossFit. But the people who are facilitating this and the people in personal training, F45s, group fitness, whatever you might be, a lot of these people they want to give a good class, period. They're not worried about you making movement. You got a good sweat. Let's go. And I think we're dealing with our health, man. The people facilitating these stuff that are teaching you how to do these movements need to be able to tell you how to make these movements right and tell you and cue you on how to get better. And I don't see that happening.
So,
in
all
both
that
areas.
said, yeah, in
both
both
training
areas,
too.
for sure. So, all that said, since we're talking about CrossFit today, what would it take for David Corona, to recommend a CrossFit? Let's say you have a friend in Florida, in Orlando, whatever, and they're like, "Hey, I'm thinking of starting this CrossFit thing. There's like 7 gyms that I Googled in the area, all kind of equidistant from me. Corona, what should I look for?" And this is what we want our listeners to take away here. I have my thoughts on this, but I would love to hear.
I would go back to our second episode of personal training.
Mhm.
I would go to our second episode of personal training where we discussed that you should go check out a couple clubs, check a lot of these places to go out and to see what place is going to look at you as an individual and put you in the best position to succeed at that CrossFit level. And I will still go into this. I'm not affiliated enough to tell you. You say there's 9 movement screens. I see a lot of people not doing that, and maybe it's the gyms that they're in. But for me,
I mean, I'll tell you what that is real quick. The 9 movements are literally looking at 9 movements of air squat, overhead squat, front squat. And can you do that with a PVC or barbell? And we're going to move you along. However, again, theoretically, while you progress, we can point out certain things, cues, things like that. So there's the squat pattern. There's strict press, push, jerk. And then there's the deadlift, sumo deadlift, high pull, and the clean, usually done with a medicine ball to show dissociation between your hips and arms and things like that. So those are the 9 foundational movements, just real quick, and that CrossFit sells, or so to speak, or
so
pushes.
stop right there. Do you think that's complete?
I didn't say it's complete. That's why
I'm just asking you. Do you think that? So if you were going to make a change into that, being the person that
hold on. So
what would
hold
you
on.
add into it?
Well, hold on. So is it complete overall? No. Is it enough of a precursor? And again, if you have 1,000 people coming off the street and we need a way to screen them, right? And this is a big global thing. So that's the other part too that we're talking about here, is this overall good versus perfection. And I think that was kind of your question of, would it slow down the growth and the expansion and the concept if we had people, again, you threw out like, they needed to do 5 months of whatever pre-training, and depending on training age and things like that, and wherever people are. Some people, again, I just had a client here who the CrossFit gym sent to me, said, "Hey, she has a shoulder injury. I want you to assess her and tell us if she should or should not jump into class." I did an assessment. I did a very thorough assessment. Patting myself on the back. But my result of all that was to say, hey, I think you should hold off and let's address this for the next 3 months and commit to me. And that's because it's a tendon rehab protocol. And in that time, we can get you moving better. That's not what I would do for everyone. She actually moves pretty well and has good body awareness. But because she has this injury history that she dealt with for over a year with failed physical therapy, we can talk about that another point. But anyway, that's
episode
a rarity.
3.
Yeah, shout it out. That's a rarity that a CrossFit is going to trust me, and then they're going to lose 3 months of revenue from that one person, in the hopes that this person's going to come back after 3 months, be stronger, be more resilient. And these are all definitions and terms that we could throw in there. And then she's maybe going to last much longer, where somebody with that shoulder injury could jump into class, could get into that community, could also at the same time be dealing with the shoulder injury with some of the things, but it might slow down how that shoulder's healing. I'm saying let's make this bulletproof by not doing anything else for 3 months, or and so anyway, without going too far down that rabbit hole, which it's its own rabbit hole. Coming back to
wait a minute, that's the first. Wait, let me stop you there, because I find this so interesting. That's the first time I've ever heard that a club goes out and bypasses their revenue and sends it to somebody as qualified as yourself, my friend, and they come in and you do the work on them to get them healthy so that they can actually go into class and be successful. You know as well as I do, we don't hear these stories.
It's not the first. I'm going to challenge you there, because it's not
the first time I've heard of it.
No, it's not, because there was literally the way, and maybe it was because she was a very educated consumer, but the video we were talking about earlier today, where the famous YouTube girl, whose name I actually forgot, I should look up, but she literally had the same issue. And I remember very clearly, she said, they took me through these 9 foundational movements that I just mentioned. She could not perform them efficiently enough that they felt comfortable that she should be doing snatches and things like that. And she continued learning. She was traveling a lot too. There was a lot of other stuff there, but she is another example. And now, like a relative, I'm not going to say a famous example, but now, so it's not the first time you've heard it. It's the first time maybe you've heard it in a way that's stuck with you. I'm going to challenge you on your words and your thinking there, but she, but she very much is somebody who, the exact same kind of situation. Now they still had revenue coming in, so maybe it's not the exact same situation, because they were like, hey, you need to do private training with us. We're not necessarily going to send you to a physical therapist, because she didn't necessarily have injuries that she was dealing with. She was recovering poorly. That's another part of her whole thing, but she did not move well enough, and then they gave her workouts she could do because they didn't think she was good enough with the barbell and the snatch and things like that. So coming back to it, it's not the first time you've ever heard it.
It's not the first time I've heard it, but I will be. Listen, this whole podcast, every week I learn something new. In my time here in New York, I haven't heard that from any CrossFit box. I haven't heard anything like that, period. And that is, now I've heard it before, if that's what we're going to discuss, Bo, but I haven't heard it come out of anything I've seen here in front of me.
Yeah. So coming back to your question, I feel like I didn't really dodge it, but I went around it a little bit. But coming back to it, if there's those 9 foundational movements, and like this YouTube chick, I think if you can show competence with those 9 foundational movements, that tells me you probably will do okay. Now, again, there's that injury rate, whatever you want to call it, 20% of doing a sport. And if there should be an additional offer of, hey, we have a physical therapist that can do a further assessment if you want to. We're not going to require it per se, but if you want to, that's up to the consumer. And this is where the growth and the push pull of it all is, hey, there should be some screening. And this is where you can say, like, this becomes a political thing almost, and this is where CrossFit is very libertarian, almost, without going down the political rabbit hole. But it becomes, is it up to the CrossFit gym to say, like, unless you do these certain things, unless you're vaccinated, unless not to open that whole can of worms, but unless you can prove XYZ, we're not going to let you work with us. Is it also up to them to say, here's the avenues we can get you to, again, just like the high school? Is it up to the high school? I went to Brooklyn Tech High School. It's a specialized high school. You have to take a test to get in. Is it with our friend Erin Grace Clark, who was our guest a few episodes ago? But is it up to Brooklyn Tech to get the students ready to be at Brooklyn Tech? And the same thing for Syracuse University that you're wearing now. Is it up to Syracuse University to get people ready to be in Syracuse? Or is Syracuse just, hey, we're providing this great education, right? And it's up to you to meet our standards for getting here. And so, yeah, it's a give and take. It's an interesting.
It's an interesting analogy. I don't think it fits really, really well. But I don't, because I will say this to you.
Well, who's it up to then? That's kind of my interpretation of the question is, you said that's the way I took the question.
When you're in college and you have a strength coach in college, it's the coach's responsibility to make sure you don't get injured, and then you get stronger, you get better, you get faster, you do this. Our responsibility after we get past the college ranks and all that stuff, your job is to actually research things as much as you would research for a house, a car, or whatever, so you find the right thing to get into. The problem that most people have is they don't know who they're dealing with, and they don't know the criteria to base on those people, so they know if they know what they're talking about. So you, who I've known for many, many years, and I would definitely take my life and lay it in your hands and say, this is what my issue is, that's how much respect I have for you. I would say to you, here you go with this. But there's other people I would look at and say, not a chance. But they're certified, and they're the ones making it. So let's get back to your analogy of the school. Yeah. There's a level that you have to enter that school. You won't get accepted into those schools.
Right.
Now, if you're coming off the street and you're a business and you're trying to grow your business, it is in your best interest to make sure that the client comes first. And it's hard coming from that perspective to say, listen, man, if you do this over and over again, you're going to get hurt. So we got to start you here so that you don't get hurt. And therefore, you can have a seamless transition. You might get hurt down the road, but off of inception, let's work on these areas first so that you don't get an injury. I think it's in the club's and the owner's best interest to make sure that the client doesn't get hurt.
So I'll push back. I'll keep going with that whole thing and kind of say, so the term that's coming up for me as you're talking is risk mitigation, right? The risk of injury is the issue that we're kind of diving into.
Sort of. But wait. If you don't, I'll go back to the internally rotated shoulder. Somebody has an internally rotated shoulder. He sits at a desk all day. He's going to go on there. He walks into his first class. The guy lets him go ahead. He does a snatch. You know damn well that if he's like that, he's not going to be able to control his shoulder and all that other stuff that comes with that.
Right. And I'll tell you, almost every CrossFit gym, when they see somebody with a barbell overhead and they're in this really bad position, they're unable to accomplish that, even like
100%.
And there's movement standards where, again, CrossFit, I would say, is much higher. Oh, my light lamp just went off. CrossFit has movement standards that are far and away above most other fitness things. As an example, when I was in New York City working with CrossFit NYC, one of the largest CrossFits in the world, whatever, they had a relationship with it was the decathlon of, I forget, I have a shirt from it somewhere. They brought us in to judge because it was all the big banks and Morgan Stanleys and what are some of the other Credit Suisse and all these big businesses.
Bank of America.
Yeah, so they would basically, I think it was the RBC decathlon. Anyway, But they would send these big guys, and they would have this huge competition, physical competition, and it was a decathlon. It was 10 different events. So previously, they had personal trainers from Equinox because that was considered like the cool niche, like high-level brand. But people would come in and they would bet on if people could accomplish certain things. And previous years, you'd have guys coming in and doing dips and doing 77 dips with partial range of motion. And then they would win like $1 million for, whatever charity. And again, it all went to charity, whatever. But anyway, the point is, this was 2012, I want to say. And they brought in us as CrossFit guys who understood movement better than most Equinox trainers. And again, we're not here to 100%. Shit on Equinox and things like that. But the point being that we have these movement standards. So coming all the way back to your point about somebody overhead squatting is, if somebody, there's a certain risk mitigation that I'm going to say CrossFit does a very good job of. And again, could it be more of a filtration system? Possibly. Same thing as like driver's licenses, right? That, I think this is a good analogy, actually, is in order to maintain a driver's license, and this is something we see with older folks who start having vision problems, how often do they have to renew their driver's license? What do you have to actually prove as proficiency to drive a car, which is it's life or death you know, and as
100%.
you get older folks who have vision deficiencies, who have start having mental declines, it's impossible to catch all of these issues. So that's what the real interesting thing here is. Again, back to like libertarianism, political, like how much should the government get involved in COVID's vaccines, all these other things. We're not going to go there. But in terms of bringing it back to CrossFit, to your question, that's what I'm taking out of it is again, when somebody's struggling with an overhead squat, which is a big struggle for a lot of people who are internally rotated and have poor shoulder mobility. CrossFit does a pretty good job. Even at the worst CrossFit gym that I've seen, they do a pretty good job of saying, hey, instead of doing that with a barbell and struggling and doing 100 bad reps where you're driving with your emergency brake on at 100 miles an hour, and that's going to lead to problems. They do a pretty good job of risk mitigation. And, some people slip through the cracks for sure. But I still think, again, it's far and away doing a lot more good than bad. It still could use work, but how much can we say, hey, like everybody should be doing what? Just like a driver's license is like, how do we get all the bad drivers off the road?
You're not going to do that, but I'll go back to what I think about all of that. Listen, if you want to go take a class, whatever class it might be, and if you understand the basic concepts of movement and how to move a bar, how to press something, how to curl something, how to row something, if you know how to do those things, you go into the class, you're going to get full benefit of those classes, 100%. The problem is I think people just jump into class, and I think they do this in all forms of fitness. This isn't just CrossFit. This is all sorts of fitness where people just like, oh, I'm just going to go run a marathon. Like there's going to be training in that, dog. Like you got to go through a lot of stuff to get there. But I think that people should get a one-on-one session to understand how they do stuff before they go into group settings so that they have a real good proficiency going in. I don't understand. You asked the question that you asked me that I've been kind of like walking around in circles is what would it take for me to refer somebody to a CrossFit gym? And I would have to know the CrossFit gym, and I would have to know who's actually going through that, or go to episode 2 where you have some recommendations where you have we have a criteria of 5 things that actually will give you a better idea of where to start. And if you're not that comfortable in that space and you're doing something that's listen, these movements are technical as hell. I don't care what anybody says to you. Those movements are technical as hell. And if for you to not have the proficiency in doing those movements, the chance for injury goes up. Yes, it is mitigation of injury. Yes, it is about you have to go to work on Monday for most of these people. And we really need, I personally would prefer a one-on-one before you walk into any class setting so that you can understand and get proficiency out of it, especially CrossFit, because I think the lifts are extremely technical. And I don't think people really, really realize how technical those movements are.
So to kind of put a knot in that for me, or a pin in that, or I don't know what the analogy is at this point.
But whatever you want to do, buddy. Whatever you want to do.
So again, like the interesting thing about group fitness is, and this is something we haven't really touched on, is the financial aspect of this. Is, let's say
100%
on average monthly membership to a CrossFit gym for unlimited classes nationwide. And again, if you go to a smaller market, it might be $150. If you go to a bigger market, it might be $250. So let's average it out and call it $200 a month. All right. The one I'm currently with, I believe it's $170 a month. So within that context, compared to average personal training rates, and you give me an average nationwide personal
125. Say 125, $100.
I think that's pretty high, but sure.
Okay.
We'll
okay. No, where do you want to go? 75?
Let's call it $100. Let's call it $100 to make the math easier. Because I think nationwide, I think in New York City, you have people charging $300. You have people.
Yeah.
You have the
Equinox
Groupon
is like $240 to even join, dude. It's crazy.
Right.
With like $1 billion down.
Anyway, but the point is, from a financial perspective, because what you're getting if you go in 4 times a week, 3 times a week, even, let's make it easy. So you're getting 12 semi-private group training sessions where, again, a lot of these gyms, a lot of these CrossFit classes do not fill up to 20 people, right? You might have 10 people in a class. So now you're getting 1 to 10 attention. And when you're talking about these complex lifts, you're getting your reps. And so you at the very beginning, I'm gonna make this a little bit debate and try to prove and win the thing is, you said like the snatch, the clean and jerk, these complex lifts, proper kettlebell swing are beneficial, and you think they're good, correct? Just want to
Those
clarify.
movements are beneficial. Yes, they are.
That's
They
it. That's it. That's it. That's it.
they can be beneficial if
That's
done
it. That's it.
appropriately.
That's
If
it.
they done appropriately.
Sure. So, but back to my point is how does somebody learn that if they can't afford $100 a session and maybe it takes 5 sessions? And if again, the ideal kind of CrossFit or whatever the reality of CrossFit is if every month you're making your way and maybe you don't put more than an empty barbell up, and there's training bars and there's PVCs and there's different things where, again, any relatively competent coach who took this level 1 thing should, and again, it doesn't always happen, but to add this in to your mix of vocabulary and ability to learn, just like, again, back to the education concept, is it beneficial to go and hear Shakespeare and things that you might not always get in the curriculum directly? Is it beneficial to diversify what you're learning and what you're exposed to, and different poetry and different historians and different aspects of culture and things like that? I think at the end of the day, it's a very good model. But with the caveats that we're talking about, those 5 rules from our previous episode, is, yeah, there's a way to progress it, but there still needs to be some exposure. And if that coach sounds like they know what they're talking about to some extent, and I think there is just, even, we're trying to provide a consumer's guide to some extent. So I do think assessment's important, but for some people it is as simple as, like, I'm going to look at these 9 moves and where are your deficiencies. Overhead squats in there. So if you can't perform an overhead squat, you're probably not doing a snatch yet, because you can't hold that bar overhead. And pardon my armpit stain there. You're making me nervous. But bottom line for me, to wrap that whole thought process up, is I still think there's a lot of benefit from a cost perspective, from a exposure, from, again, a true chasing of big fitness, is if you can learn how to do that, if you have a coach there who should be there, and then it's about you as a client. Again, this is where we come back to what we were talking about a little bit. Who's the responsibility on that coach? And again, I hear the coaches all the time saying, and it's one of the things, is like the ego is the thing that gets in the way. And again, the better gyms are better at managing those egos and saying, hey, if you're not feeling great, you didn't get a great night's sleep. Like, and again, that's that relationship of, hey, Corona, you look a little tired today. Like, everything okay? Have that quick 30-second conversation. Like, yeah, I'm a little beat up. Cool. Instead of doing, 225-pound deadlifts and handstand push-ups, I'm going to ask you to, like, here's how I want you to change that workout. And that's expected to me in almost every CrossFit I've been to. I mean, there's better and there's worse. There's going to be ones that don't. But, like, again, if we think about all the negatives and, like, oh, I've seen
No, it's not about the negatives. I just want to push back on one point you made. And that's listen, I understand cost. I get cost, but your body, the cost of you getting injured, to me, is greater than the cost of me not learning, of me going to some spot and not getting my best whatever, to learn how to do the movements the best.
But what's the cost of not? But that's where we come back to the community, the whole methodology of what's the cost of not participating in a fitness program, and what's riskier at this point. Again, let's I appreciate where this is going, and I appreciate what you're saying. So for me, it comes back to what's going to save you more money. Is it going, and what's riskier at this point? So let's forget everything. Let's pick on F45. If somebody said that question to you, I'm in Orlando. I don't know why I'm picking Orlando. I have a friend I was just talking to from Orlando, but I'm in Orlando. Should I? And you can only answer A or B. Should I go do CrossFit or F45? Based on this person being a previous athlete, you don't know anything about the specific CrossFits, because all the CrossFits could be different. There's no standardization. F45 is pretty standardized as to what they teach and how they implement their business. So CrossFit or F45, what should I do? I'm a pretty good athlete. Like, I want to get fit. What's my best risk mitigation, or where's my best time?
Take a walk. Listen, I understand what you're saying. If you're an athlete, former athlete, and you understand movement, probably the best workout you're going to get, and probably what you're going to be most safe, I would assume, would be the CrossFit. over the F45.
I said all you can say is A or B. That's you don't like
say
instructions, Cuban man.
No me gusta. So I will say I'll go with CrossFit. I'll go with CrossFit in that scenario. And you know damn well, but I will curse out bar workouts for the directions that they give in bar. I just think that everywhere we go, listen, I will concede something. And I cannot believe I'm going to say this. CrossFit gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not in full agreement of all that stuff, but CrossFit, that's it.
I was waiting for more, but yeah.
CrossFit gets a bad rap. And if you're in the right space, you can get tremendous benefit from CrossFit. That will help you with your life. 100%. I'm not a big, and I've said it over and over again. I used to do group fitness. I used to teach it. I'm not a big group fitness person because I want everybody to do things right. And it's hard to get that when you're in a class of 25 to have one instructor try to get everybody to do it right. My thing is the technical lifts that we're dealing with in CrossFit, but I will give CrossFit its due. 100% I'll give it their due. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I will give it their due.
Victory, my friends, victory. I'm going to wrap it up here because I think we could go for many more hours diving into.
He just wants to leave with a victory, people. That's all he wants.
V for victory. This is something very different in Britain, if anyone's familiar. But V for victory. All seriousness, I want to wrap it up by saying what can be our takeaway. I, as a doctor of physical therapy who has studied movement, I still go in and I try to continue to build my work capacity, and I get a really good push from this tool. And there's many different tools. I have a really nice garage gym that is pretty fully equipped that I use to train other people one-on-one. So anyone who wants to train in the Colorado area, come on by. We'll get you a really good workout. Superior. But my point is, like, I still get a really good workout. I still believe in this model. I do obviously understand movement better than most. I have all these certifications and things like that. I have a doctorate in physical therapy. So, but at the end of the day, I still go in and I do the class and I modify things. At this point, I just turned 38 a month ago. I'm modifying things the way I feel I need to. There was a workout yesterday I jumped into that was, what was it? It was 15 wall balls, which you take a medicine ball, you throw it up on the wall with 30 pounds, which was pretty freaking heavy. Usually that's 20 pounds, but it was meant to be a little bit of a tougher workout. 15 of those. Then you do 10 inverted barbell rows. So it's basically a push-up, except you're pulling your body in a plank position. Then there's deficit push-ups. So you're doing a push with your chest all the way to the ground, but with plates also underneath your hands. So you're going even into a deeper range of motion. And then it was a 48-inch burpee, and you have to get over that 48-inch target box, whatever. So you have to jump. And again, you're getting into these like obstacle course races. You did that 5 rounds. And you have 4 minutes to complete that work in each round. And so if you do in 3 minutes, you get 1 minute of rest. So there, again, we can play with the aerobic and all that stuff. So it's one of the hardest workouts I've done in a while. I didn't modify it at all. I still have enough of a fitness base that I felt I could do everything with a full range of motion, things like that. So I'm just giving that example to wrap it up a little bit here. And my closing thought is there's definitely a place for it. I personally believe in it. Again, I have now a training age within CrossFit since 2010 when I got this shirt. And then I played college football. I've been involved with athletics to some extent pretty much my whole life. So there's a lot there that needs to, be investigated. And that doesn't mean CrossFit is, I still do believe CrossFit works for everyone and everyone can benefit from the concept of CrossFit. Every single CrossFit gym is not created equally. There are just terrible ones out there that I would give 1-star ratings to. I've walked into many. I've been to hundreds around the world over the years, many of which are probably closed now. I have a t-shirt collection in my closet here of probably well over 100 different CrossFit shirts from different gyms. So, it's an interesting business model. There's a lot to be said there. I just want to wrap it up by saying, again, I appreciate that you conceded that it gets a bad rap. There's a lot that can be said. At the end of the day, I have a definition of fitness. The way I work with people one-on-one, totally separate from CrossFit, is I want to assess your fitness. And that might include some aspects of CrossFit and how many burpees can you do in 7 minutes, to a 6-inch target, which is a not fun test. Is that a great measure of fitness? Maybe. It's a measure of fitness, and we can reproduce that, and we can look at that on a scientific basis, and we can argue the merits of it compared to 12 minutes of running on a track, and how far can you cover in that, or 12 minutes of rowing on a Concept 2 rower, which requires some skill. All these different ways to look at fitness. I think there's merit there. I love that we had this conversation. I hope that a lot comes out of this in terms of people listening, challenging us, saying, hey, I didn't like that you said that. Let me challenge you there. Throw those questions at us, guys. I'm going to wrap it up there. I'll let you have your closing thoughts.
I'm just going to say, I'm going to really wrap it up, but I just want to be very, very clear about something. You know, you kind of go into things and you see things and you kind of, and I've learned this, I think Dr. Bo has really helped me a lot in this area, that you kind of, I see a lot of stuff and then I generalize it to what it is. When you actually look at CrossFit as a whole and what it's actually the methodology of it, it's very sound. I will say that it's very, very sound. I may not like how it's implemented by certain people and certain folks, and I may not like how it's being done or how people have this or that with it. None of that really matters. But when you're looking at just the construct of what it is, have an open mind to it, because it does get a bad rap. It's bastardized a bit, and I think we really, really have to look at it. We have to thank, as a fitness professional, we have to thank CrossFit for bringing other eyes into the fitness field and get people in there that would have never been in there without it. So with that being said, yes, I do think CrossFit sucks a little less.
A little.
But I think as consumers, I still think you need to go to episode 2 of us, where you're trying to pick somebody to help you get from point A to point B. And I think it's vitally important. And I will say it till the day I die, guys. Individualization is very, very important. Find out what works for you and make sure that when you're doing these movements that you know what you're doing and that you're proficient in them. But CrossFit sucks a little less for me. But do me a favor. If you like it, don't forget to subscribe, like, share. Just saying.
Comment, all that good stuff. Leave a rating, review, wherever you happen to catch this.
Leaving a rating makes it easier for people to find us.
That's right. All right. Appreciate, again, that back and forth. And again, I hope you guys got something out of it if you were listening. We'll wrap it up there. I think there's a lot. I'm starting to I'm trying to push all these thoughts away that are springing up, and I want to go down the rabbit hole. But we gone over an hour. Again, if you guys made it this far, we really appreciate you listening. And I don't know if we should chop this into 2 episodes, but we did chop it up, as Corona likes to say.
We'll chop it up into 2. We'll chop it up into 2, but an hour's a lot. Yeah, well, thanks for listening, guys.
Peace. Victory.
Ooh.